On today's episode, I'll be talking about the 1993 animated superhero feature Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
If you're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always leaves a chance to hold hands for romance, or you're looking for the look within no man or cold hands, it's a creature of the night who heads for the spotlight. I'm here to welcome you to Brandon at Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon at Random Reviews.
All right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen topic at a time. If you like listening to a guy recap and review movies in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. Before I really dive into today's movie, I want to explain one of my favorite things ever, and I kind of deemed this necessary for today's episode. Batman the Animated Series is widely considered to be the gold standard for superhero storytelling, at least as far as TV shows in the animated medium. It changed cartoons, and it was a pivotal step in the evolution of the way the world viewed Batman. Here is a breakdown of why this show remains a masterpiece over 30 years later. Until the mid-1980s, the general public's perception of Batman was still heavily influenced by the campy 1960s TV show with Adam West and Burt Ward, or the bright, toy-driven Super Friends cartoons that I believe aired during the 70s or maybe at best late 60s. The shift started with the comics, but for movies it began with Tim Burton's Batman from 1989 with Michael Keaton, which proved that a dark, gothic caped crusader could be a massive commercial success. Warner Brothers wanted to capitalize on this Batmania with a cartoon. However, instead of making a standard Saturday morning toy commercial, the creators fought for a sophisticated cinematic drama that respected the source material's darker roots. The show's success is largely attributed to a core group of visionaries who treated the project like high art. Bruce Timm, the lead character designer and producer, streamlined the aesthetic that defined the look of what would become the DC animated universe. Eric Radomski, a background artist and producer whose moody atmospheric paintings set the tone for the series. Paul Dini, a writer and producer who brought deep emotional resonance to the scripts. Andrea Romano was the voice director who insisted on recording the cast together in the same room, which was rare for animation, and it really allowed for genuine chemistry and performances to take place. Obviously, there were a lot of people that went into this, but those are the highlights. The show's visual identity is its most striking feature. The team coined the term dark deco to describe the style. To ensure the show felt dark, the backgrounds were literally painted on black paper instead of white. This made every light source, from the bat signal, headlights, the moon, just pop with a moody neo-noir glow. The world is quote-unquote out of time. Characters use 1990s computers, but they wear 1940s fedoras and trench coats. They drive vintage-style cars while police blimps float over Art Deco skyscrapers. This makes the show feel like a living dream and kind of transcend time, essentially. For many fans, the actors that were in this cast were the definitive versions of these characters. Kevin Conroy, who plays Batman/Bruce Wayne, was the first actor to use two distinct voices. One, a charming, lighthearted playboy voice for Bruce Wayne, and a low, gravelly, but empathetic growl for Batman. Even though to be fair, Michael Keaton did speak in a lower register, and that was really the first time there was a significant distinction between the voices. Mark Hamill, who played the Joker, transitioned from Star Wars hero to the ultimate villain. His Joker was terrifying and hilarious, defined by a range of manic laughs that could go from a giggle to a blood-curdling shriek. And then Arlene Sorkin, who played Harley Quinn. The show actually invented Harley Quinn. Originally meant for a one-off cameo created by Paul Dini, Sorkin's performance was so iconic that she became a permanent fixture not only in this show but in DC history. Obviously, she went on to get very popular over the years. So here are some iconic episodes. Batman the Animated Series did have incredible animation, but it also had incredible writing that often explored tragedy and mental health. One example is Heart of Ice, which is an episode that famously reinvented Mr. Freeze from a generic ice gun villain into a tragic, sympathetic figure mourning his terminally ill wife. It won an Emmy and changed the character's comic book history forever. Almost Got Him was another episode, which is a fun, classic one where the villains, including Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, etc., sit around a poker table and trade stories about the times that they almost killed Batman. Beware the Grey Ghost is a meta tribute featuring Adam West, who portrayed Batman in the 1960s, as an aging actor whose Grey Ghost hero character inspired a young Bruce Wayne. Robin's Reckoning is a powerful two-part episode that dealt with Dick Grayson's trauma and the complexities of his relationship with Bruce. And then, last but not least, just taking a small sample, POV is a different episode that is very well regarded by fans, and it's told from the perspective of a group of different police officers recounting an incident after it happened from their own point of view, sharing their unique perspectives, especially of Batman, and they basically just tell the story as they saw it. So you kind of hear the same story multiple times, but it's all, it's unique. It's not like you're just hearing the same boring story over and over again. But the reason why it's still beloved is because Batman the Animated Series never talked down to its audience. It treated children like they could handle complex emotions like grief, revenge, and moral ambiguity. It made the villains as human as the hero, and it made Gotham City feel like a place you could actually visit if you were brave enough. Obviously, I wanted to go really into it a little more, but, it's like I kind of had to draw a line and simplify it as much as I could because I just wanted to touch on how well regarded it was and some of why it's so well regarded. So like I said, today's movie is Batman Mask of the Phantasm, released on December 25th, 1993. Runtime 76 minutes. This movie is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. Budget $6 million. Directed by Eric Radomowski and Bruce Timm. I wonder if I think I pronounced that wrong earlier, but yeah, you didn't care at the time. So Eric Radomowski and Bruce Timm. For the writers, we have Alan Burnett, who was a very regular, wrote a ton of episodes. He was a regular writer on this show in the series form, and he wrote on this. Paul Dini, I already mentioned. Martin Pasco and Michael Reeves. All four of these individuals wrote this movie. For the composer, we have Shirley Walker, and I guess I'm going to talk about just drawing from my own experience and what I've read about this show, because obviously I'm a huge Batman fan, so I've read up on this stuff. But Shirley Walker, famously within the show, had her own version of the Batman theme, and the only reason they didn't initially use hers as the primary theme that is associated with the opening sequence and all that stuff that's in every episode is because Danny Elfman actually agreed to use his score, or at least a version of his Batman 1989 score that was so popularly known. And so eventually they had different opening sequences that featured Shirley Walker's theme, and I think that pound for pound, I love both of these themes. I don't particularly dislike Shirley Walker's. I think hers is very good. I do like Danny Elfman's a little better just because it's the one that I'm most familiar with and I think is a little more epic, but hers is amazing too. For the cast, some of these names I've already mentioned, but I wanted to go into it. So Kevin Conroy, of course, plays Batman / Bruce Wayne. I love Kevin Conroy. He passed away a few years ago. I actually did a little tribute in one of my episodes to him. He is, for most people, the definitive voice of Batman. He is so commonly the voice of Batman in animated form, and he voiced him in all of the Arkham video games with the exception of one, and that was just because it was a different studio that made the one. Arkham Origins is the only one that doesn't have him, but Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight all use Kevin Conroy's voice. He's just perfect for the role. I mean, he sounds exactly like you would want Batman to sound. Dana Delaney plays Andrea Beaumont. Hart Bachner plays Arthur Reeves. Stacy Keach, I actually don't know if it's Keek or something like that, Keach, but he's a pretty well-known actor. He plays Carl Beaumont, and he's also the voice of the Phantasm. Abe Vigoda plays Sal Valestra. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. plays Alfred Pennyworth. He was, with the exception of a couple early episodes, the voice of Alfred Pennyworth throughout Batman the Animated Series, and he is great. He's just got like this really nice dry wit about him, and he's really amusing. Bob Hastings voices Jim Gordon, and honestly, great fucking voice for the role. Like he's another one that it's like you hear his voice and you're like, oh yeah, that's Commissioner Gordon. That's what he would sound like. And then Robert Costanzo plays Detective Harvey Bullock, and honestly, I think he was the guy that was in Die Hard 2. He was, I think, the guy. I don't remember. Yeah, I can't remember for sure. But yeah, I think it was him. For casting notes, there are no casting notes really. This cast is largely comprised of voice actors who already had established roles in Batman the Animated Series. For a plot synopsis, as Batman is wrongly implicated in a series of murders of mob bosses that are actually committed by a new masked vigilante assassin, he seeks to uncover the truth about what is really going on. For the tagline, or taglines I should say, The Dark Knight fights to save Gotham City from its deadliest enemy. Okay, I prefer using the phrase, oh, that's right, I added this little tip. So I think the better tagline for this movie would be, Your Angel of Death awaits, just because that's a line from the actual movie. You'll find out more about it, but I think it would be a really cool tagline if they would have used it, but they didn't, so. Alright guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this motherfucking movie. So, this movie actually has a pretty epic opening credit sequence as we get one of the two main theme songs from Batman the Animated Series. This is the Shirley Walker one. The other one is composed by Danny Elfman, as I mentioned, and is largely based on his theme from the Tim Burton Batman movies. But this version of Shirley Walker's theme is haunted as fuck sounding and features a choir singing what I assume are just nonsensical words along with the tune of the music. And there's also more instrumentation. The sequence also features a 3D version of Gotham City that is pretty cool looking and was pretty ahead of its time. It doesn't look like traditional animation, but I don't think it's really computer animation. I think it was just the style of animation that they used looked 3D. It slowly moves in on a group of men meeting in a boardroom in one of the buildings, and they're discussing some deal that they're making where the man proposing the deal has developed counterfeit bills for them to use. Suddenly, as they're discussing the details of their deal, Batman swings in from outside and breaks through the window and begins fighting fucking everyone. Many of them draw their guns on him, and Batman knocks a table over on one of them, and then he throws a guy into a picture that is framed on the wall. The main guy who was working out the deal with the counterfeit bills escapes and runs across a skywalk of some sort, and he's suddenly approached by this dark figure who is shrouded in clouds, like dry ice clouds, basically. And we're going to be calling this dark figure the Phantasm. The guy wrongly assumes that the figure is Batman, but suddenly the figure says, "Chucky Saul, your angel of death awaits." And he realizes it's not Batman at all. He jumps into a car and drives away and manages to take out the Phantasm temporarily and even turns around to try and finish the job. But as he approaches again, the Phantasm leaps out of the way and Chucky ends up crashing through the wall of the parking garage, and then his car flies across from the building it was originally in to a different building across the street with momentum and crashes through that wall, leaving the horn blaring as the vehicle is like, wow, I'm struggling to talk right now, as the vehicle is basically just hanging half out of the building. Batman arrives and looks out across from the nearby damaged wall of the parking garage, and he's clearly a little confused about what the hell just happened. And we're, of course, all a bit confused about what took him so long to get there, of course. And then suddenly, innocent onlookers on the ground look up and see him and naturally just assume Batman caused all the commotion that resulted in the crash car and Chucky's death. Batman turns around and walks towards some of the broken glass on the ground and examines it and looks over and sees a dark figure disappear up a stairwell with a trail of clouds behind it, and he can't catch up to it in time before the Phantasm has escaped through the roof exit. It cuts to Councilman Arthur Reeves confidently proclaiming that Batman has gotten out of control with taking the law into his own hands, but Commissioner Gordon adamantly defends Batman and proclaims that Reeves is not right for blaming Batman for what happened to Chucky Saul, and he knows that it just couldn't have been Batman that did it because that's not really his style. Reeves explains that this is not simply his opinion and that even some of the police agree that Batman has gotten to be as dangerous as some of the criminals that he brings in. And he motions to Detective Harvey Bullock, who notoriously dislikes Batman throughout Batman the Animated Series and doesn't support his vigilantism or his way of carrying out justice. But mostly Bullock is just a total dick who never wants to admit that Batman does anything right or worthwhile, even when he objectively does that a lot of the time. Reeves declaratively asks what kind of city they have if they have to depend on a madman to bring people to justice, but since he's an elected official, his words just they kind of feel very hollow, basically, in this moment. It cuts to Bruce Wayne in the Batcave, who is watching Reeves making those statements on the news, and he analyzes the piece of glass from the windshield that he found at the parking garage with the residue on it. It cuts to a woman talking to Reeves on the phone while she's on a plane, and it is insinuated that this plane is about to arrive in Gotham City. Reeves is in his office, and he asks her if she intends on looking up some old friends while she's in Gotham City, and she looks down at a magazine with Bruce Wayne's face on it and tells Reeves not to start his bullshit again, basically, even though she's clearly thinking about meeting with Bruce. But it's established that it's been like 10 years since this woman has been in town, and just to clarify, because we'll find out who she is soon enough, she is named Andrea Beaumont, and by cartoon standards, she is honestly quite the smoke show. She basically dismisses Reeves's comments and says that Bruce Wayne is ancient history to her now, after all this time, and he tells her that that's encouraging in a sarcastic way. Then it cuts to a party that Bruce is having at Wayne Manor, and he's surrounded by these three women who are teasing him about marriage and engagements. Then a redheaded woman walks up to him and warns the women to stay away from Bruce because he clearly mistreated her in some way, at least from her perspective, and she throws her drink in his face. Arthur Reeves is also at this party, and he was the guy that was just talking to Andrea Beaumont, who was on the plane. And him and Bruce clearly know each other, and they ask how each other are doing, and Bruce asks Reeves how his crusade against the Batman is going. And Reeves just says that it's going better than Bruce's love life, clearly. Reeves deliberately brings up Bruce's past with Andrea Beaumont and asks how he ever let her go. And clearly it's a touchy subject, so Bruce basically tells him to fuck off. Bruce escapes into an empty room and looks at a framed picture of his parents with a distraught look on his face. The screen warps and it flashes back to Bruce when he was decently younger, like he just looks a lot younger, and he's putting roses on his parents' grave at the cemetery, and as he does this, he overhears a woman speaking, and he looks over and sees her talking to her deceased mother while facing her tombstone, And this woman is, of course, Andrea Beaumont, that we heard talking on the plane earlier. Bruce interrupts her to ask her if she was talking to him, and she says no, but then as he walks away, she starts talking to her mother again and points out that was Bruce Wayne, eccentric billionaire, registered trademark 2012. But then, as she says that, Bruce comes back again and double checks to make sure that she's really not talking to him because he even heard his name this time. She explains that she's just talking to her mother, but she's done talking to her for now, and she says Bruce shouldn't judge her because a lot of people talk to their deceased relatives all the time, and Bruce clarifies that he didn't say anything, so he really wasn't judging her. She explains that she likes talking to her mother because she can say things to her, and then if she says it out loud, she can kind of imagine how her mother would reply and can almost hear her replying back to her. Bruce proclaims that he also talks to his parents, and Andrea asks him what he says to them, but Bruce clarifies that it's more like he makes a vow to them, which I hate to break it to you, Bruce, but you don't talk to your parents like she talks to her mom. Sorry for you. He asks her she asks him what kind of vow, and he says that it's a secret one, and she proclaims that he's a real man of mystery. And she asks him if he has kept that vow, and Bruce says so far he has. Then Andrea asks him if he's so rich and famous, why is it every time she sees him, he looks like he wants to jump off a cliff? And Bruce says that he's surprised that she would even care about that, and Andrea clarifies that she doesn't care, but her mother was asking about it. Andrea drives off in her convertible, and Bruce looks up and sees storm clouds rolling in, and then it cuts to a different time during this same flashback. Bruce is dabbling in his vigilantism before he has fully become Batman, and he's wearing this night prowler outfit complete with a ski mask and all dark clothes. He sees some men clearly stealing boxes from a warehouse and loading them into a truck, and he jumps down from the top of the building to intervene and tells them to stop, but they don't really take him seriously. He throws a couple of throwing stars at their weapons and then proceeds to get into a fist fight with them, and just as he goes to celebrate and untie one of the security guards, one of these bad guys that is still remaining shoots at him with a shotgun. The guy then flees in that truck that they had loaded all the stolen goods into, and Bruce jumps on the back and he's like clutching to the doors for dear life, and he's just like swinging from the doors of the trailer as the truck is going down the road rapidly. Eventually, it catches the attention of a patrolling police cruiser who ends up flipping on its siren and lights and attempts to pull the truck over, I guess. And so, because this is a predominantly movie podcast, I'm going to take this time to periodically give you some insights on the greatest cartoon ever created, Batman the Animated Series, even though I already touched on it. This is the style of animation that I was talking about, the dark deco thing, especially in regard to the buildings and the vehicles. They're made to look old-timey, despite the story mostly being set seemingly in present day, and it gives it this timeless feel. But basically, all of the vehicles look like they have body styles similar to vehicles that you would see from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, especially this police cruiser. Bullock happens to be one of the two officers inside the cruiser, and the truck is being very aggressive and trying to get away because obviously they know that they're kind of fucked if they get stopped. Eventually, the truck manages to knock over the police cruiser and eliminate them from the chase very unceremoniously. When Bruce sees this, he climbs over the trailer and onto the cab's roof. Of course, he crawls all over as he tries to take out the bad guy driving the truck, and eventually the truck topples over on its side, and Bruce is like on the front of this truck, like on the grill as it's laying on its side, and he narrowly escapes being crushed against this wall as this truck slows to a stop. Sometime shortly after, while we're still in this flashback, the newspaper has a story about the bust, and Bruce is practicing jujitsu in the backyard, and he's being very serious and enthusiastic about it. Suddenly, Alfred announces that Bruce has a visitor, and it's Andrea, and she casually asks him why he hasn't called her yet. Bruce seems confused and asks her if she really expects every guy who meets her to just call her up, and she proclaims that she only expects that of the ones who are smart enough to use a phone, which is fair because Andrea Beaumont is a fucking catch, y'all. Honestly, she really is just the best. I love her personality and her confidence, and she's honestly perfect for Bruce. And she even has a great sense of humor that's very charming. Andrea casually walks up as Bruce explains that his jujitsu is no joke. And just for the sake of information, jujitsu is a Japanese martial art focused on close contact grappling, throws, joint locks, and chokeholds, emphasizing using leverage and technique to control and subdue an opponent, allowing a smaller person to defeat a larger one. But despite how fancy pants Bruce's martial arts might be, Andrea catches him off guard and seemingly very easily flips Bruce over onto his back, which of course surprises him. She explains that she's been taking self defense classes for girls, and he laughs at her, which she calls him out for, and then he playfully makes her fall down by kind of like tripping her gently. And she's obviously totally into it, and she smiles up at him as Alfred is walking out with a tray of refreshments, and it's heavily implied that Bruce and Andrea proceed into totally fucking doing it right there on the back lawn. This is based on Alfred's reaction as he's shocked and he like turns around to go back inside awkwardly without distributing any of his refreshments. The flashback comes to an end, and Bruce is still in that dark room by himself at the party, looking at the picture of his parents, and Alfred summons him to come back to the party because he's really being a complete dog shit host at this point. It comes to a group of men arriving in the cemetery while it's still nighttime, and some kind of mob boss named Buzz Bronski steps out of the back seat and tells the two men who were in the front to stay there as he walks away. He walks up to Chucky Saul's grave with a flashlight and throws a wreath of roses on it, and suddenly he hears the Phantasm's voice. Of course, it's not familiar to him. He looks around, but he doesn't see anyone. But as he looks down at one of the gravestones, he hears the Phantasm's voice again, and it says, "Buzz Bronski, your angel of death awaits." Buzz manages to flee for a little bit and even knocks over a cart that has a pickaxe in it, and he holds it up to use for self-defense. And finally, the Phantasm comes after him and takes the axe right off the handle, like just slices it off, because I should probably mention that the Phantasm's right hand has a weird blade on it instead of a hand, which seems to be designed similar to the way a pirate's hook hand might be. Buzz is pretty confused by this whole encounter and yells out, and finally, the two guys from the car come to see what the hell's going on, and it looks like Buzz has fallen into this empty grave, and the Phantasm approaches him and tells him he's always been a loser and says farewell. A very large statue at the head of the grave is pushed in the empty plot by presumably the Phantasm, even though we can't really see it, we just see the statue falling. Eventually, the two men show up and see the Phantasm leaving, and also just naturally assume that it was Batman, and they fire their guns at him, and the Phantasm, of course, still gets away. It cuts to a decrepit old man reading the story of Buzz's death in the newspaper, who also the newspaper also wrongly indicates the Batman was behind this murder. He starts panting as he gets out of this chair and starts wheezing, and he has to slip on a gas mask and turn on his oxygen tank to recover from this hyperventilation he's doing. To clarify, this guy's name is Sal Valestra, and he's panicked because he clearly assumes that he might be the potential next murder victim in the spree of Phantasm killings that everyone just assumes were perpetrated by Batman. Then it cuts abruptly to police headquarters where Councilman Reeves is assembling a task force to apprehend Batman, as he is now considered the prime suspect in the murders. Commissioner Gordon adamantly refuses to be a part of the crew and tells Reeves that if they want to arrest Batman, he wants no part of it. Reeves, of course, does not let this dissuade him and asks the group the group includes Bullock, and he asks them if they have any ideas on how they could capture Batman. Bullock's idea is to attempt to lure him by going to the roof of police headquarters and turning on the bat signal, but it seems as though Batman is not taking that bait. It cuts to Batman and the Batmobile driving away from the bat signal and arriving at that same cemetery where Buzz was murdered. He identifies some chemical residue on the grass that seems to be similar to what he found on the windshield fragments that he brought back from the parking garage and analyzed. We as viewers, I guess, are to assume that this is residue from the Phantasm's dry ice clouds, even though I never once could figure out how that works. Like, the Phantasm seemingly just produces these clouds out of nowhere and does it at will, and at best, it just doesn't seem like it would be worth the trouble. Batman proclaims to Alfred in his cowl transmitter that it's just going to be one of those nights, and he walks over to the gravestone of Thomas and Martha Wayne nearby. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice, and it's Andrea visiting her mother now that she's back in town. The last time we knew that, like, where she was just coming into Gotham City on the plane. As Batman looks over to confirm that it's actually her, Andrea looks up and sees him and reacts with a gasp as Batman scurries away and out of sight. After realizing he's gone, she looks over and sees that he was standing right by the Wayne grave monument and ascertains that Batman might actually be Bruce Wayne. It cuts to her with Reeves at dinner, and she's absent-mindedly trying her best to listen to what he's talking about, but she has a lot on her mind, and Reeves doesn't sound like he's that interesting. Like, he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be worth giving your undivided attention to. It cuts to Batman outside with binoculars, watching the two of them in the rain, and they're holding hands over the table like a couple of 1950s teenagers. They might as well be sharing a damn milkshake, for fuck's sake. Reeves makes it pretty clear that he is romantically interested in Andrea still, even though we don't know what their background is, but she doesn't get too chummy with him or do anything that might lead him to believe that she feels the same way, really. It flashes back again, and Bruce and Andrea are dating now, and they're going to the Gotham World Fair, and there are a bunch of exhibits that display their vision of the future at the time, like futuristic things, and it's like this whole amusement park type thing. Bruce and Andrea hop into a little car on a track that takes them on a guided tour of a futuristic vision of Gotham City, and they even pass through a house that's meant to be futuristic, and it even has a robot made that is supposed to look like a maid. Kind of looks like Rosie from the Jetsons, and she's cutting up vegetables. She's got more hair than Rosie, to be fair, which is not saying much. So Bruce and Andrea are clearly very in love, and there's even one little Easter egg type moment where Andrea asks if he really thinks that they will see any of these futuristic things within their lifetime, and he looks over at an exhibit, and it's a car, and it looks like what ended up being his Batmobile in this universe. Bruce begins talking to her about the future, and Andrea explains that her father has been wanting to meet him, and when she asks Bruce if he wants to meet her father, Bruce says yes without hesitation, and as she hops on the phone in the car to call her father and set up the meeting, Bruce turns to Alfred and explains that he must be going nuts because this isn't like him at all to just throw caution to the wind. But Alfred corrects him by explaining that he's sure it's actually quite the opposite, as the two of them exchange glances at Andrea. Because, like I said, cartoon or not, this chick is an upper echelon hottie who even a billionaire couldn't actually ask to be any better on virtually any level. And you really gotta lock that kind of girl down without delay. So it's fair. Alfred's right, Bruce. Just fucking listen to him. He never steers you wrong. It cuts to Bruce and Andrea meeting Andrea's father, Carl Beaumont, at his office, who proclaims that he feels as though Bruce is already a part of his family, which embarrasses Andrea. We see Arthur Reeves there. He's much younger and more nerdy looking with a bow tie, suspenders, and glasses, and he explains that he was just leaving. Carl is embarrassed and apologizes, and he introduces Reeves to Bruce and explains that he's someone Carl explains that he's someone Bruce should get to know, even though that seems like bad advice. A vehicle pulls up outside of the building and a grim type of music starts playing, so you just fucking know that these guys in this car are bad news. Carl is carrying on with Bruce about how important it is to be careful with your money and manage it well, and suddenly Carl's assistant comes in the room and explains that a man named Sal Valestra is there, and he claims that he has an appointment. Carl begins to tense up and ball up his fists, and proclaims that if Mr. Valestra says he has an appointment, then he has an appointment, and he suddenly dismisses Bruce and Andrea to have an unpleasant conversation with Sal. As the two of them walk outside, they see a motorcycle gang intimidating some men, and they're trying to rob him. He's got like a cash box or something. Bruce tells Andrea he's going to go do something about it, and Andrea tries to stop him, but Bruce says that he can't just stand there and do nothing, even though he totally can. Andrea asks him just to come back in one piece, and Bruce begins fighting with the men, and they have motorcycles, chains, and baseball bats. But Bruce is not intimidated by them and manages to knock one of them off their bike, but he gets distracted by Andrea, like I said, upper echelon, as the other one hits him with their bat. The two bad guys gather up the money and flee on the one remaining bike that wasn't ruined when it crashed, while Bruce is down, and Andrea tries to comfort Bruce, but he's not in the mood to be babied like this. Back at home, Bruce struggles with whether or not pursuing his vigilantism is actually the right thing to do. He's unsure if he wants to continue his relationship with Andrea or if he wants to go all in on this crusade that he has been thinking about. Andrea calls the house, but Bruce tells Alfred that he doesn't know what to do and he can't talk to Andrea right now. Then it cuts to Bruce standing outside at the cemetery in the rain, pleading with his deceased parents, who frankly seem pretty reluctant to respond. He desperately tries to explain to them that when he made his vow to them, that he didn't anticipate meeting someone that was a straight up 10 out of 10 babe. And he just wants some kind of sign from them that it's okay for him to set aside his vow because he didn't count on ever being happy when he made the vow originally. He starts to beg them to tell him that it's okay, and Andrea comes up behind him and tells him that maybe they already have told him it's okay and that maybe they sent her. The two of them embrace, and it cuts back to present day where Bruce is on the ledge with his binoculars and the rain is streaming over him, and the lenses of the binoculars, like the rain's coming all over him in a very picturesque way. He vanishes as a police helicopter searchlight almost sees him on the ledge. Then it cuts to Valestra picking up Reeves in a panic, asking him if it's really Batman who is perpetrating the crimes against their organization. Reeves claims that they have eyewitnesses who claim to have seen Batman commit the murders, even though we in the audience know those people didn't see shit. But it's important to note that this very much solidifies the fact that Reeves at least knows or is even in cahoots with the crime organizations, because Sal would have had to be pretty chummy with him to have a conversation with him like this, to just pick him up in his car and have Reeves be this calm around him. Balestra asks why Batman is leaning on them now when he never has really leaned on them like this before or meddled in their affairs this much. Reeves suggests that Sal could demand police protection, but Sal dismisses the idea because he knows that Batman would not see that as an obstacle because it 100% would not be an obstacle for him. Suddenly, as Sal gets worked up during the conversation, he slips on his oxygen mask and turns on his tank, which is of course super off-putting. Reeves tells Sal's driver to pull over, and as Reeves gets out, he tells Sal that it doesn't seem very healthy in the car, and he slams the door while Sal looks at him with his mouth agape. Back in the Batcave, Batman is searching through his comically large computer for all of the different names connected with the murders, and he realizes that Sal is also connected with them. Batman indicates that he's going to pay Sal a visit at his home, and Alfred excitedly assumes that he is likely to see Andrea after that as well. But Batman angrily proclaims that Alfred doesn't know him as well as he thinks he does. But Alfred points out, Batman doesn't, he says Alfred doesn't know him as well as he thinks he does, but Alfred points out that he diapered his bottom, and he damn well ought to know pretty much every fucking thing he needs to know about Bruce. Batman tells him that he's wrong before driving off, and it cuts to Batman arriving at what you have to assume is Sal's house. But this seems like one of those things where it pisses you off when people tell you what to do, even if you were already planning to do it. For instance, like when you're at home and you're like, you know what, that dishwasher needs to be emptied. I think I'll take care of that now. And then your spouse happens to walk by and just tells you to empty it, and you're like, you know what? I don't think I will fucking empty that dishwasher now. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe if you'd been a little cooler about it. He begins looking through some documents on a desk and notices a picture on the wall that shows Chucky Saul, Buzz Bronski, Sal Valestra, and Andrea's father, Carl Beaumont, all sitting at a table together. As his focus settles on Carl, we get another flashback, and Andrea is telling Bruce that she's always wanted to see Europe and that her dad has business there the following week. She explains that her father's business is some sort of hush-hush deal that he won't tell her anything about, but I'm sure it's got nothing to do with organized crime, guys. That seems pretty unlikely. Bruce interrupts her and surprises her with a not-so-romantic marriage proposal on the beach, as he says that he's no good at this sort of thing and pulls out a ring box from his pocket. Andrea is, of course, shocked by this as she opens the box and looks at the diamond ring, and she agrees to his proposal and is overjoyed by it, even though, and I want to be clear, I don't know shit about jewelry. This rock and ring are so comically large, no human person could ever wear it unless they were deliberately showing it off. She explains that she didn't expect it because she was worried that she was just a wrench that got thrown into his mix, and she was worried that she wasn't part of his plans. But Bruce clarifies that he's changing the plan to include her, and the two of them kiss, of course. But suddenly an opening in the rocks nearby has a giant flock of bats that starts flying out of it, and Bruce has to protect Andrea. That night, as Andrea and Bruce pull up in a vehicle outside of Carl's house, she notices that her dad has company inside and that it's likely his business associates. She gets out of the car and explains to Bruce that maybe they should wait until tomorrow to break the news to Carl about their engagement, and Bruce agrees before she goes inside. There's this creepy man outside who's smoking a cigarette, and he growls at Andrea as she walks by, and then he flicks his cigarette at Bruce's car as Alfred pulls away. But the man appears pretty much unfamiliar, probably just another run-of-the-mill low-level enforcer for the mob. It cuts to Bruce exploring the cave where the bats came out near the beach, and as he explains to Alfred what he saw inside there, Alfred somberly delivers him a note that came from Andrea. Bruce gets increasingly emotional as he reads the note, and even though we don't get to hear what the note fully says, the gist of it is that Andrea says that she's too young and she needs time and that Bruce should forget about her, but it seems pretty clear that there might be other stuff going on that came up after she went inside the night before. Bruce angrily crushes her letter in his hand as it pans away and shows the portrait of Thomas and Martha inside the house. Then it cuts to Bruce putting on his Batman costume for the first time. As he puts on the mask, Alfred looks on in horrified shock and can't believe what he looks like. And it's kind of weird to think that this would be the first time in this universe that anyone would have seen Batman. It's pretty clear that Bruce channeled his bitterness and anger regarding Andrea's decision to leave him into going all in on becoming Batman. He takes the framed photo of Carl with the three mobsters off the wall and tucks it inside his cape because now it's basically cut back to present day where he's at Sal Valestra's house. Then it cuts to Sal Valestra arriving in his car at the broken down old site of the Gotham World Fair. As he walks inside, some of the old robots turn on and begin moving in unison with a song that plays, but they break down and collapse, and so does Sal with his oxygen tank as he recoils in shock. Suddenly, the Joker emerges from one of the corridors and proclaims that he hated that song anyway. He feigns shock at seeing Sal, who apologizes for dropping by unannounced. Joker asks him what he wants, and Sal says he has business to discuss with Joker, and Joker throws him in one of the automated cars on the track and takes him to the old futuristic house with the maid. So the robot housekeeper is still chopping away at the table, even though there's nothing there. And Joker squeezes her cheek and pulls off a piece of her robot skin. Then he has Sal take a seat to tell him what's on his mind. And Sal explains that Batman has gone nuts and has been whacking multiple mob bosses. And obviously, Sal's concerned for his own safety. Joker doesn't take him very seriously and jests that maybe he's finally driven Batman off the deep end, but Sal stops him and tells him that this is a serious matter and that because Joker is the only guy who can stop Batman, he's offering him $5 million to take him out. Joker seems largely disinterested in Sal's proposal, but Sal gets very serious with him and grabs him by the collar. Sal explains to him that if Batman kills him, then the Joker is probably next, which briefly angers the Joker, but just as his temper flares, he deflects with a joke, as always. He comforts Sal by telling him that he will help him out, and Sal seems relieved, but of course, there has to be more to it than that. It's never easy with the Joker. But it cuts to Andrea and Reeves at the end of their date, and he suggests that it's not a great idea to go to bed on an empty stomach as she opens her apartment door. She looks inside and sees that the balcony door is opened and the wind is blowing through it, and as Reeves offers to stay up with her and talk for a while, she declines and just kisses him goodnight. As she walks in, she turns on a lamp and reveals that Batman is standing there, but she's unfazed by this whole thing. Like, she's not fazed by his presence even a little bit. It's like she seemingly expected him, what with the balcony door open. She mentions that she likes the cape, but she's not sure about the mask. Batman pulls out the picture from the frame of the mobsters with Carl and asks her if she's ever seen the picture before. She says no, and Batman explains that Carl was the guy who brought the partnership together with the mobsters, and Andrea clarifies that that's her father's job. Batman asks her where her father is now, and she claims that she doesn't know and sarcastically asks him why he doesn't try Madagascar. She casually begins pouring a drink, but Batman grabs her hand and tells her that she told Reeves that she was closer to her father now than ever. She asks him if he had her bugged, and he clarifies that he can read lips, and she angrily tells him to read them now, and she says, "Get out." Batman asks her if she's still following her dad's orders, and Andrea responds by saying the way she sees it, the only one that's still following their parents' orders is him. Batman angrily leaves and Andrea collapses and begins crying on the bed. It cuts to the Phantasm at Sal Valestra's house, approaching who we are to assume is Sal sitting in his easy chair and reading the newspaper. But as the Phantasm walks up and pulls down the paper, it's revealed that it's actually Sal's dead body propped up there, and Sal has a camera in his lap and it swivels over to look, and the Joker's voice comes over a radio transmitter and remarks about how it's not Batman after all. He says there must be a new face in Gotham, and soon it will be all over town, not to mention a number of other body parts that will be all over. Quickly, the Phantasm jumps out of the window just before the house explodes behind him, and the screen fades to black. We see the Phantasm now on a skywalk in the city, and the Batwing is approaching from a distance, and it begins bearing down menacingly. The Phantasm begins running across the rooftop with a trail of clouds behind, and Batman begins his pursuit. Batman turns on autopilot and jumps out and begins fighting with the Phantasm, but the Phantasm proclaims that Batman should stay out and that this is not his fight. And suddenly the Phantasm vanishes in a cloud of smoke, and a police helicopter appears and tells Batman to stop and that he's under arrest. We can hear the police radio saying that deadly force is authorized against Batman as they pursue him, and they begin firing their weapons at him. Batman lands on a different rooftop after running from the helicopter for some time, and Bullock and his men hold him at gunpoint, but Batman jumps down to ground level. He runs into a construction site before they attempt to flush him out with tear gas, but just as it appears that they have gotten Batman cornered and defeated, some of the gunfire accidentally hits one of the tanks and explodes at the site. Batman manages to hide from the police initially, but then a police helicopter spots him with their light, and Batman shoots his grapnel at the helicopter and begins rappelling toward it. Suddenly, they unload a ton more shots at Batman, and it fills his cape with holes, but it's revealed that Batman took off his cape and cowl and ran off on foot while they were distracted, thinking he was going toward the helicopter. Suspect is maskless. I repeat, maskless, as they pursue him on the ground, and he avoids letting them see his face. Suddenly, he cuts through an alleyway, and Andrea stops by at the end with her convertible and picks him up to save the day. They leave Detective Bullock angrily panting as he realizes he let Batman slip through his fingers again. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice, back at Wayne Manor, Alfred has bandaged up Bruce's head. Andrea explains that she had to do something because the story was all over the news about them chasing Batman, and Bruce clarifies that he is grateful for her coming to rescue him, but he still wants to know why she's being so dodgy about what's going on with her father. She explains that she doesn't see the point of trying to conceal this because she knows the world's greatest detective will find it out eventually, but it flashes back and she explains that the night the two of them got engaged, when she was going in the house, she could hear the three mobsters yelling at Carl. They basically accused him of stealing their money, and they explain that they're going to get it out of him one way or another, and Andrea breaks into the room and asks what's going on. Carl is shocked because obviously he didn't want his daughter to see this happening, and the three mobsters turn around. Sal says he's sorry she had to see this. Then the other two apprehend her, and it's heavily suggested that they intend to harm or kill her to prevent her from talking about what she saw and potentially telling authorities or whatever. But Carl pleads with Sal that if he'll just give him until the next day when the European banks open, he can have the money that he owes them wired their way. Sal reluctantly agrees and gives him 24 hours to make good on his promise, and the mobsters leave. Andrea asks Carl if he's okay, and he instructs her to pack her bags because they have to flee the country as soon as possible. And she says she thought that he was supposed to be giving them the money tomorrow and everything would be fine, but Carl explains that it's not that simple and that all of the money is tied up in investments and it would take weeks to get the amount of money freed up, like that he owes them. She explains to him that Bruce proposed to her and that she can't just leave and that she doesn't understand why he got involved with these people, but he just apologizes and says that eventually they'll get free of those guys bearing down on them, even though that seems kind of doubtful because the mob's not really known for letting things go. She explains that from that night, they were on the run and they hid all over the world, moving from one country to another all the time. She explains that her dad was able to parlay the money that he embezzled into a fortune until he thought he had gotten enough money to pay them all back. But Carl quickly realized that it would never be enough and that they wanted interest compounded in blood, and it flashes back to the present with Andrea telling the story in Bruce's bedroom. She explains that when she heard that Chucky Saul had been murdered, she had to come back into town to stop, presumably her dad. Like Bruce puts it together that this must be, the Phantasm must be her father. Andrea explains that that's now twice that she's come into his life and screwed it all up, and she attempts to walk away, but he grabs her arm. He rubs her cheek and she begins crying, and it seems like they're about to do it again as Alfred walks in and then immediately turns around and walks out. The next day, Andrea is outside looking out across the ocean, and Bruce comes out to see her, and she asks him if they can make it work this time, and Bruce says he wants to make it work, but he explains to her that it will come down to him and her father, and she explains that Daddy doesn't matter anymore. Before she leaves in her car, she tells Bruce that she will see him that night, and Bruce comes out and remarks about how nice it is to see the two of them together again, and it's kind of like, okay, Alfred, it is very nice, but also like it seems like you need to read the room a little bit and realize it's a little bigger than that right now. Alfred asks what this means for his alter ego, and Bruce seems distraught as he explains that everything's happening so fast. He explains that he does indeed love Andrea, and that maybe after everything is settled, the two of them can be together. Alfred assures him that his parents would have wanted him to be happy, but Bruce looks down at the photo of Carl with the mobsters and notices the creepy man with the cigarette in the background. Like it's just the first time he notices that that guy is in the picture, the guy that was standing outside of Carl's house when Andrea went inside. He grabs a red marker and draws a red mouth underneath the guy's nose and recoils in horror as he realizes that that man ended up becoming the Joker. It cuts to Reeves in his office angrily hearing the news about how Batman was able to get away from the pursuit of so many police officers. Then the Joker comes to his door and Reeves is shocked to see him. Reeves tells Joker that they aren't really friends, and the Joker reminds him about him and the mobsters and how they used to hang out together, but Reeves tries to clarify that he just worked for Carl Beaumont and that he didn't really know what all was going on. He finally asks Joker what he wants, and the Joker says that he's determined to find out who has been killing all of the mobsters in the organization. Reeves tries to tell him that it's all over the papers that it's Batman, but the Joker says that it's not, and that it's that he's seen the guy and it's not Batman. He explains that it's got to be someone who has a personal stake in getting all of these guys out of the way, including the Joker himself. The Joker suggests that he thinks that it actually might be Reeves, because now that he's become so important, he might find it awkward if certain secrets were revealed about his past, but Reeves can't believe he actually thinks it might be him. And honestly, I'm kind of with Reeves on that, because Reeves is way too much of a bitch to be as cool as the Phantasm. But they're suddenly interrupted by a phone call from Andrea, who is canceling lunch plans with Reeves, and she says she can't explain now, but she will later. The Joker points out what a remarkable coincidence it is that Andrea would happen to call just as they were talking about her father. We suddenly see the Joker grab Reeves's arms and presumably attack him in some way, but we don't really see anything else in that moment. Then it cuts to the hospital, where we hear a very high-pitched laughter, and Reeves is helplessly laying in a hospital bed, laughing uncontrollably. The medical staff is attempting to subdue him, but he can't stop laughing until they finally drug him enough to make him stop. The doctors and nurses leave the room and shut off the light, and suddenly Batman shows up to visit by coming in a window. Batman asks him why the Joker met with him and assumes that it has to do with the murders of the mobsters, and he wants to know why the Joker would think Reeves was involved. Reeves is still very much under the effects of what the Joker did to him and just desperately says he doesn't know, and that he only helped Carl and Andrea flee the country. And the last time he talked to Carl was years ago during his first election campaign. But when Reeves called Carl to ask him for help with some campaign funding, Carl told him no, and Batman ascertains that that was when Reeves sold Carl out to the mob. Reeves attempts to defend himself by explaining how desperate he was and that all they wanted was their money back, but obviously he didn't know the whole story, but he was probably aware that he was being a big piece of shit, and he probably took money from them. Batman heads for Andrea's apartment and looks around a little bit and notices a locket with Bruce and her as the picture inside. To clarify, and spoilers for the entirety of the Batman universe, but Bruce Wayne is actually Batman. Suddenly, the phone starts ringing in her apartment and he answers, and it's the Joker calling to reveal that he's ambushing the apartment with flying explosives, and he proclaims that it's no use to try and escape, even though he believes he's talking to Andrea. Batman throws a batarang and causes the miniature plane carrying the bomb to explode prematurely without actually killing Batman, and the Joker laughs with delight, assuming that he killed Andrea in the explosion. It cuts to Andrea standing outside one of the buildings at the World Fair, and it flashes back to her house, wherever it was, when her and her dad were in hiding. And as she goes to open the front door, someone else starts to open it from the inside, and it's revealed to be the creepy smoking man that turned out to be the Joker. She knows this can only mean one thing, and she pleads with the guy as she runs inside that Carl paid them and that it was supposed to be over, but clearly it's too late because the Joker already killed Carl for having done what he did, and you can hear Andrea screaming as she discovers his body inside. Then it cuts back to the present, and Andrea heads inside the broken down World Fair building where the Joker is inside. Little small but crucial side note here is that Joker brought a stick of salami there and is having the robot maid cut it into slices for him. He looks over and sees that the balcony doors are opened and the Phantasm walks in. The Joker proclaims that she's harder to kill than a cockroach on steroids, and the Phantasm says, "So you figured it out," because he used female pronouns deliberately, and she removes the mask to reveal that the Phantasm has been Andrea all along. She hits him with a cloud of smoke and he coughs for a while, and then he sprays her with his poison flower on his lapel, and the two of them begin fighting across the floor. Finally, the Joker stands up and hits a button, and the robotic maid begins attacking Andrea, and she knocks out the maid and pushes the Joker up against the table, but he grabs the stick of salami that the maid was cutting up and hits Andrea hard enough to distract her so he can jump off the balcony. Then as she goes out after him and lands on the ground, she can hear his voice over the PA system, and he announces that it's just in time for her to meet her biggest fan, and one of the futuristic jet turbines turns on and begins spinning rapidly, and the wind picks up aggressively all around her and starts pulling Andrea in the direction of the turbine, and Joker begins turning up the speed. She desperately tries to hang on to a few things and then gets dangerously close to flying into the turbine before Batman arrives on his motorcycle. He sees her dangling and being pulled toward the turbine, and he rides over near her, but Andrea can't hold on to the flagpole she's clinging to anymore, and Batman jumps the Batcycle and then leaps off of it to save Andrea and lets the Batcycle crash into the turbine and destroy it. The Joker is obviously annoyed that his plan didn't work, and Batman stops Andrea because he's figured everything out. He points out that she came into town early to kill Chucky Saul so that she could misdirect authorities and deflect blame to her father, who was already dead before the crimes were committed. She explains that the mobsters took everything from her, including her dad, her life, and Bruce, and she says that vengeance is all she has left. And actually, I'm pretty sure that's the tagline to John Wick. She proclaims that Batman can either help her or get out of her way, and Batman explains that he cannot do that. Batman asks her what vengeance will solve, and she calmly explains that if anyone should know the answer to that, it's him. He calmly tells her to leave, and she vanishes in a cloud of smoke, and the Joker flags down toward Batman and runs away for Batman to just chase after him. Like, I'm sorry, I wrote the note really weird. So the Joker flags Batman down, and then, like, basically he's just trying to get Batman's attention so that Batman will go after him. Batman pursues him through the model of the futuristic Gotham City, and Joker turns on all of the electronics and remote-controlled vehicles and lights. He eventually breaks off a piece of a model building and hits Batman with it and dispatches a bunch of remote-controlled helicopters to fly after Batman, and the Joker hops on the model train and rides away on it, only to jump off and flip a switch while Batman is still fighting the remote control helicopters. We see the switch the Joker flipped has activated a bomb near where the robot maid was, and he comes back to tell Batman he's too late, and he explains that there are 20 miles of tunnels under the site and that they are all filled with explosives, and he says that in 5 minutes everything goes up. Batman chases after the Joker, but he can't find him, and he comes outside and sees him trying to escape with a jetpack and chases after him. Batman's able to climb up and then leap on the Joker's back, and the two of them struggle through the air, and the Joker pleads with him that he's his only chance to get out of there, and that if they keep struggling together, they'll both die. And Batman just proclaims that he'll do whatever it takes, and they crash down on the ground. Andrea walks up and grabs the Joker by the collar, and Batman pleads with her that she has to get out of there because everything is rigged to blow. But she explains that it has to end tonight, and she says goodbye, my love, to Batman as all of the explosions begin to go off in the park. The Joker begins to laugh hysterically as he faces his impending doom, and Andrea envelops the both of them in a cloud of smoke, and the two of them disappear as Batman tries to catch them. He dives through the cloud and he falls and lands in some water and ends up going out through the drain system as the park continues blowing up. Then back at the Batcave, Batman laments at the thought that he was unable to save Andrea as he's talking with Alfred, and Alfred clarifies that he doesn't believe that Andrea wanted to be saved at that point. Alfred explains that he always feared Bruce would become that which he fought against, but he explains that he is grateful that no matter how close Bruce has come, and however many times he has looked out into the abyss, he has never fallen in. He explains to Bruce that Andrea fell into that pit years ago, and he says that no one, not even Bruce, could have pulled her back. Bruce sees something bright shining nearby in the Batcave, and he runs over to see what it is. Then when he grabs it, he realizes it was the locket from Andrea's apartment that had the picture of her and Bruce in it, and he just looks at it somberly. It cuts to this cruise ship where a man approaches a woman on the deck in the night, and it's clearly Andrea, and he tries to talk to her, but she doesn't respond. And when he asks her if she wants to be left alone, she quietly responds, "I am," as she looks sadly out into the night. Then it cuts to Batman on a building ledge inside the city, and the bat signal comes on, and he looks up at it, and then he swings off the ledge, and we roll credits. Okay, so trivia for this movie. Most of the movie is based on the graphic novels Batman Year 1 and Batman Year 2. The flashback to Batman's first night of crime fighting, donning a jacket and ski hat, is parallel to book one of Year One. The design and concept of the Phantasm was derived from the Reaper, the primary villain in Year Two. Late in production, Warner Brothers decided to make the movie a theatrical release with major cooperation and granted the filmmakers a large amount of creative control. While the animators were thrilled and extremely grateful for this decision, this left them with less than a year of production time and scrambling to convert the aspect ratio to widescreen. One scene depicts Bruce Wayne at his parents' tombstone saying, "I didn't count on being happy." According to writer Michael Reeves, this scene was to be a pivotal moment in Bruce's tragic life as he denies himself the opportunity to live a normal life. Reeves also stated, when Bruce puts on the mask for the first time after Andrea breaks their engagement and Alfred says, "My God," he's reacting in horror because he's watching this man he's helped raise from childhood, this man who has let the desire for vengeance and retribution consume his life, at last embrace the unspeakable. Paul Dini intended each of the flashbacks into Bruce's love life to have a tendency to get worse just when you hope things will get better. Although the Joker does play a pivotal role in the film, it was Alan Burnett's intention to tell a story far removed from the television show's regular rogues gallery. Burnett also stated that he wanted to do a love story with Bruce because no one had really done it on the TV show, and he wanted a story that got into his head. The end credits song, "I Never Even Told You," is a rare singing performance by Tia Career. Tia Career, in case you don't know, is the actress from Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2. She's like Wayne's love interest, and also she's in the movie True Lies, if I recall correctly. The computer-generated version of Gotham... Oh, so it was computer-generated. Version of Gotham City, seen in the opening credits, was originally designed to be used in the Batman the Animated Series TV show. The purpose was to create a virtual set to replace the hand-painted backgrounds and help speed up production of the series, but it was never used for that purpose. This is the first film set in the DC animated universe, which has since gone on to have dozens and dozens of films. Honestly, most of the DC animated movies are better than most other comic book live action movies. They're just really well done. The only thing I don't like about some of them is that the animation is kind of uninspired. Like the more they go, it's like, I wish that the animation was a little cooler. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in that. The fighting style Bruce was shown practicing was very close to Taekwondo, despite him calling it jujitsu. The move Andrea performed on him, however, was from jujitsu. Mark Hamill went to a screening at a local theater during the film's theatrical release. With only a few people in attendance, he asked them to sit with him before the film started. The writers were highly cautious of placing the Joker in the film, as they did not want any connection to Batman from 1989, the Tim Burton movie, but writer Michael Reeves said, "We then realized that we could make his appearance serve the story in a way that we never could serve it in live action. To keep the identity of the Phantasm a secret, Stacy Keach voiced both Carl Beaumont and the Phantasm. They also designed it so that the Phantasm had the same build as Carl Beaumont and Arthur Reeves. Despite the title, the Phantasm is never referred to by name. I couldn't find any IMDb nuggets that were worth sharing. They weren't amusing or stupid enough. Alright, on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, 1.2 million. Worldwide gross, 5.9 million. IMDb rating, 7.8. Letterboxd rating 4.0, Rotten Tomato critics score 83%, Rotten Tomato audience score 88%. Personal rating 5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. This movie is fucking perfect, but I guess I'll get a little more into it than that. I love all of the different aspects included in the story, especially the cool way they show Batman's origin through flashbacks. Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are the two best voice actors to ever portray their respective roles in any capacity, and that opinion is almost universal. Criticism for this movie: they probably will never make a live action version of this, And honestly, that's probably okay because I wouldn't want to tarnish this film by doing that. Like, I wouldn't want to have to, every time I talked about Batman Mask of the Phantasm, that I would feel like I was just, gonna have to clarify and say, well, the live action one wasn't quite as good, or, it was different, or whatever. It is what it is. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
I'm here to welcome you to Brandon at Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon at Random Reviews. What you hoped you would see, he's half-blind with hacks tight with all the dates of release. For footloose the dark night, oh Kurt Russell, brain freeze, rear windows and gaslights. I'm really in your neck, shining stone, the legs spread. The clock starts with the eggs, you won't stop till you're dead. I'm here to welcome you to Brandon at Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon at Random Reviews. What you looking for, man? There's no plans or romance, and you always take the chance to hold hands or romance. You're looking for the roof with the moment of cold hands. It's a creature of the night who heads for the spotlight. I'm here looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always leaves a chance to hold hands for romance. We're looking for the roof with no man or cold hands. It's a creature of the night.